In this video, you're going to start to explore the spread operator in JavaScript. The spread operator is basically the opposite of REST parameters, and to mess around with this, we're going to start by modifying our print team example down below. I'm actually going to remove everything in this file except for the print team function declaration and function call. Let's imagine that the format we get our data in doesn't line up with the format the print team function expects. So let's say that we get our data out of maybe local storage, for example. We have a const team, it's an object, and then we have the properties on there. We have our name, which would be Liberty. We then have our coach property, which would still be Casey Penn. And then finally, we have that players array. So we have players, and we have the same players we had before. The first person in the array, Marge. Then we have Aiden. After Aiden, we have Herbert. And then finally, we have Sherry. So let's say that this is the format our data comes in. Now, this is the data that we have to work with. This is the function we have to work with. We need to figure out how to make these two work together without changing either of them. We might not always have access to change the function, especially if it's a function from a third-party library. So let's see how we might approach this. The first two are pretty easy. Down below, we can simply reference as the first argument team.name. That'll make sure that the team name argument gets set up correctly. After that, we'll pass in the team.coach property, making sure that coach gets set up correctly. Now, the third argument isn't supposed to be an array of players. It's supposed to be one of the individual players, where the fourth, fifth, and sixth arguments are the other individual players. Now, yes, we could approach this like the following. Team.players, grabbing by index the first player. This is indeed going to work as expected. The problem is that the players array can be of any length. So maybe there's 50 players in this array. I don't want to have to do this 50 times and change the actual function call if the array length changes. It's just not a good approach. The better approach is to use the spread operator. The spread operator allows us to spread out an array into individual arguments. So to do that, we put inside of our function call 3 dots, ... just like we did with the REST parameter, followed by the array we're trying to spread. So right here, that would be team.players. This is equivalent to what we had before. With the spread operator in place, we're still calling print team with 6 arguments. The first one, the team name, the second one, the coach, then the next 4 arguments passed to print team all come from that array. So in the end of the day, everything is still going to work as expected. If we go ahead and save index.js, in the background, things are going to refresh. What do we get? We get our team name still printing. We have Marge, Aiden, Herbert, and Sherry. And we can prove this is working further by making some changes to print team. I'm going to comment out this third line right here. And for the moment, I'm just going to switch this up, removing the REST parameter. And I'll just call this first player, then second player, just to prove that we're actually getting individual arguments passed in. Down below, we can add a temporary console.log call. So console.log, first player, comma, second player. We can use a comma separated list to print multiple things individually. And if I save index.js over in the browser, what do we get? We get Marge printing and we get Aiden printing. So using the spread operator, we're converting an array into a bunch of individual arguments for a function call, allowing us to access them like we would for other individual arguments, or allowing us to access them via REST parameters. Right here, to make sure this function still works, I'm going to switch that back to using the REST parameter. I will then uncomment the line I had commented, and I'll remove our temporary line down below. Now, the cool thing about the spread operator is that it's not just limited to us calling a function when we want to have individual arguments instead of an array. We can actually use it when we're working with arrays in a wide range of contexts. So let's mess around with that down below. For this example, we need an array, so let's go ahead and create an array of cities. Maybe they're cities we're trying to plan trips to or visit in the future. Right here, const cities equals an array, and we're just going to have this be an array of strings where each string is the city. I've been trying to go to Barcelona for a while. I've also wanted to go to Cape Town, and the last one, Bordeaux. Awesome. Now we have our cities array, and let's say we want to run this list by someone else and allow them to make some changes to it. But we don't want them to change our original copy. We want to clone the array and have them change the copy. So how do we clone an array in JavaScript? Well, with the spread operator, that's actually really easy. Let's start by creating a new empty array. Const cities copy. You can call it whatever we like, but that seems like an appropriate enough name. And we're going to set this equal to an empty array. Now, the goal here is to get all of the items from this array as items in this array. Now, we don't just want to reference cities like this. That's going to create an array where there's only one item, and the item is an array itself. So we have an array in an array. That's not what we want. We want an array of strings for cities copy, just like we have for cities up above. So what are we going to do? We're actually going to use the spread operator. So inside of our square brackets, that's dot, 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 and then we're going to reference the array we're trying to spread out. Up above, it was players. On the team object. For this example, it is cities. Now we have two arrays with the exact same information. When I spread out an array like this, it takes all of the items from that array and it adds them as items to the new array. We can prove they're now exactly the same by printing both to the console. So console.log cities right here. Then on the next line, we'll use console.log again to print cities copy. If I save index.js over in the browser, what do we get? We get the same array twice. I have Barcelona, Cape Town, and Bordeaux. The cool thing, though, is that these are now separate arrays, so I can change one without changing the other. For example, let's use push to add something onto cities copy. So cities copy.push. I'll add on a new suggestion. Let's go ahead and use Santiago. Now we're adding that onto the second array. The first one, though, is going to remain unchanged. So when we use the spread operator in this way, we are creating a true clone of the array. Changing one no longer changes the other, and that's a good thing. Now we can also add items to the copied version of the array right here as we define it. Let's see how we can add Santiago on using that method. So I'm going to remove the push call, and we're just going to make some changes to what's inside of these square brackets. Let's start off by removing everything inside of there, and we're going to add on the new suggestion, so Santiago. Now we want to add on everything from cities right afterwards. So we would use a comma, then we would spread out using 3 dots the cities array. This is exactly what we did up above when we used the spread operator with our function call. Here we spread out team players, adding on a 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th argument. Down below, we're spreading on cities, creating an array with Santiago as the first one, Barcelona as the second, Cape Town as the third, and Bordeaux as the fourth. Now if we go ahead and actually save things, we're going to see that Santiago sits up front and all of the other cities that got copied sit afterwards. We could also switch up this order. We don't have to use the spread operator last. So I could spread out these cities first, dot, dot, dot cities. Then after I do that, I could add on the new suggestion, Santiago. That's going to work just as well. This time around, we would see the 3 copied ones coming first with Santiago coming afterwards. So the spread operator gives us a great way to work with and create new arrays. Last up, the spread operator can also be used as an alternative way to add items onto an array. So let's switch the const cities over to let. Then instead of creating a new variable cities copy, I can just set cities equal to the old cities value plus the new one. So this is going to have the effect of adding a new item onto the end as if we were using push. I'm going to remove the console.log that prints cities copy, which no longer exists. And if we run things, we can see that with the new code in place, I was able to add Santiago onto the end. I could have also chosen to add it on to the beginning by spreading cities out after Santiago. So this is an alternative way to add items on to the beginning or the ending of an array. Now it's your turn to use the spread operator on your own. For this one, I'd like you to use it inside of the Hangman application. So in there, we have the source directory, and we have our hangman.js file. Down below, one of the methods, makeGuess, currently uses push to add a new guess onto the array. I would like you to use the technique we just learned about to add guess onto the array instead, using the spread operator. Once you've changed the code in this if statement, go ahead and actually run this application from the terminal, then view it in the browser, and make sure you can still correctly make a guess. All right, pause the video, knock that one out, test your work, and when you're done, click play. How'd that go? Let's go ahead and kick things off. The goal here is to still change the guessed letters array. So I'm going to set this dot guessed letters equal to a new array. Now we're going to start off with all of the old items. So I am going to spread out this dot guessed letters. And then I'm going to add on the new one. The new one being whatever value is stored in the guess variable. So there we go. We're now using the spread operator with arrays to add a new item onto guessed letters. Let's go ahead and save hangman.js and test things out. I'm going to switch over to the terminal. I'm going to shut down the boilerplate project, cd:/hangman to go over to that app. I'll use npm install real quick to install all of the dependencies, and once they're up and running, we're just going to install the dev server and make sure we can still make a guess. All right, the dependencies are installed. npm run dev-server. Over in the browser, I'm going to give things a refresh. And what do we see? We see our Hangman application game booting up. I'm going to start making some guesses. Whoops, by clicking in the screen, of course. And I can see those guesses are indeed being reflected on the screen. So we know that our make guess method is still working with the spread operator in place. All right, that is it for this video. In this one, we learned how we can use the spread operator with arrays. In the next video, we're going to learn how we can use the spread operator with objects. I'm excited to get to that. So let's go ahead and jump right in to the next one.